Hey, this is Haley and welcome back to Bookshelf Bard. So this week I finally decided to pick up A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I went into this as a cynic. I had seen good reviews and then I had seen reviews that just absolutely tore this series apart. I thought for the past few years it was just filled with sex and smut, and that's the only way she could have gained this following. She's the only way she could have gotten this many people to read this book. So I picked it up Thursday night and I did not put it down until Friday morning when it was completed. I loved it so much. I was sucked into this beautiful, intricate universe that Sarah J. Maas excellently put together. She did such a good job world building this series. So it's a dark fantasy, it's kind of a romance fantasy. And if you're unfamiliar with the story of A Court of Thorns and Roses, it follows 19-year-old huntress Feyre, who's had to become the sole provider for her family. They've fallen on hard times and lost their fortune. So she's in the woods hunting for dinner one day and comes upon a deer. But to save this deer for the meal, she has to kill a wolf. And it ends up that this wolf is a fairy in disguise. And as punishment for this crime, this murder, she is taken and abducted to the land of Prythian to spend out her days under the care of Tamlin, who she discovers is a high lord of the Fae, of the Spring Court. And it evolves into this beautiful enemies to lovers type of situation. And in the process, she has to battle this evil queen Amarantha and face these 3 trials to basically prove her love. So it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but I didn't feel like it was too cliche. I thought it had a beautiful twist, and I fell in love with the characters Feyre and Tamlin and Rysand as you go through the storyline. And if you read the first book, I can understand why you would hate it if you only read it as a standalone. So I can understand some of the negativity surrounding it. You have to read the second and the third novels to truly understand the characters' motives throughout the story, why they did some of the horrendous acts that they did, and see the character arcs evolve. It's beautiful. She did such a good job world building this series. I thought it was a fantastically done fantasy. Some of the other negativity that I've seen, about her being this female that's just good at everything. And I don't think that's necessarily true. A lot of her victories are hard won with the assistance of her friends and her family. So there's a lot of skills that she doesn't master, that she's not good at. And that's okay. I didn't need another heroine who was good at everything. And I didn't feel like Feyre fit into that trope. I thought that she had to fight. She fought these grueling battles to win some of the victories that she did and to get to where she was at the end of the series. And I also saw some negative reviews on why is she complaining? Why does she hate this situation that she finds herself in the first novel? She's in this beautiful spring court with this handsome captor, but you have to see it through her eyes. You have to be empathetic to her situation. She has lived her whole life hearing these legends of torment and torture and enslavement from the fairies. And in fact, 500 years earlier, the entire human race was basically the workforce for the Fae. And so they've heard nothing but the cruelty, the torture, the murder, the enslavement. And as she crosses this wall and is brought into the spring court, she realizes that the legends weren't true. And she begins to form her own opinion of the Fae kind, and also a lot of the biases that she had formed against this population, this people. And she begins to test her own beliefs, and her hatred for the people ends up evolving into a love and a guilt for the murder that she had accidentally committed. As the series goes on, you see this beautiful, intricate storyline evolve, and you will absolutely fall in love with the characters. You'll find villains that you hate with every fiber of your being, and you'll also fall in love with these twisted, beautiful villains like Rysand. So please, I'm sure you'll love the first one, but if you were kind of teetering on the edge, follow through, read the second at least. You'll find out how extraordinary this series actually was. I'm in love. I'm so sad that it's coming to a close, that I just started the 5th novel today. And I'm so sad. I know I'm going to go into a book depression. I was actually supposed to film this yesterday and I couldn't because my face was so puffy from crying over the 3rd novel. And I finished up the 4th one this morning. And the 4th one is actually kind of a transition after the battle between Feyre and her people and the King of Hybern, who is one of the villains. And it follows up with the post-traumatic stress that they all face and the depression that some of the characters go through. And that's one thing that I loved about Sarah J. Maas. She absolutely put such detail into the devastating effects of depression and anxiety and PTSD. She didn't just gloss over the issues, she thoroughly described how it affects individuals and their friends and their family. I think she carried that throughout her whole series, and I think she gave it the attention that it so rarely is given. I really have nothing negative to say besides, in the first novel, there was one thing that it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It was kind of a sexual scene, and I thought it was quickly approaching this 50 Shades of Grey vibe, and that is one series that I have not read and I will never read. I just was never interested in that type of violent sexual atmosphere, and you realize why you were uncomfortable with the situation. After you read the 2nd novel, you realize that this relationship wasn't meant to be. It was never meant to be a standalone novel, and she did such a good job of explaining the characters' acts in the first novel and why you felt uncomfortable, because I thought my little queasiness about the situation was unfounded, but you start to realize, oh, okay, like there's a reason why she had you feel this way in the first novel, and I'm glad that it panned out the way it did. So please pick up the 1st and 2nd novel, and if you don't love it after the 2nd one, then you probably won't love the series. And I hope whenever they transition this into the big screen, whether it be as a TV series or a film, that they give it the attention it deserves and the budget that it deserves, because I feel like it has a huge potential to be the next big fantasy series, the next big fantasy blockbuster. And she put such dedication and intricacy into world building this fantasy land. And I feel like they won't do it well. I feel like they're gonna just make it this cliche romance erotica, and that's not what it is. She did such a good job building those relationships, building the backstories behind these characters and the lore behind this world, that I'm really scared for the injustice that Hollywood is going to do to this series. It's gonna ravage my soul if they make it into this erotica that it just isn't. So enjoy the series. Read at least the 1st and the 2nd novel. I'm sure you'll love it, and if you don't, then don't apologize for what you love and what you don't love in literature, because I thought I was gonna hate it, and I hope I don't have Twilight level regret whenever this movie ends up coming out and then I have to go back and re-examine my feelings for the book. But that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for tuning in.